Hi, you're back with the On Fire Show. I'm waiting for Mr. William Temple to come on live. Mr. William Temple is out of Georgia, Brunswick, Georgia. He's a great Patriot Tea Party. He speaks his mind about politics, social issues, and what's happening around the country with definitely Donald Trump. Hey, Mr. William Temple, how you doing? All right, I'm gonna add you on. Add. I'm adding Mr. William Temple. Are you there? He's going to log in on. I think he's logging in right now.
Okay,
Hey,
here
Mr.
we
William
are.
Temple, there you go. How you doing?
How are you? You know, when you're 250 years old, all these little buttons just go all over the place.
Oh, okay.
So,
Yeah, I'm just trying to log you on and
I
everything.
haven't seen each other.
You there?
We have,
What's going?
yeah, I'm here.
Oh,
We
okay.
haven't seen each other for a year and a half, I don't think.
Yeah, a year and a half. You know, I still carry my.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that one
how's it
will get
going?
them all upset.
Yeah.
I'm doing real well. I'm getting ready for CPAC here at the end of the month,
Yeah,
and
and I definitely signed up for CPAC.
right, I'm going to invade the swamp one more time.
All right, all right. You're a great patriot, a great historian, and I want to tell the audience, people who are watching, all about you. Now, you're a Vietnam vet, right?
Yes, I was with the 199th Light Infantry Brigade, affectionately known as the $1.99.
Oh wow, the dollar nine. So and how long were you in Vietnam for?
Well, I was in there for 13 months, July 69, and then came back in July 70, actually 12 months. And
Okay.
my twin brother was up with the Marine Corps up in the north at the same time. So we both had to sign. I had to sign away my citizenship for us to be able to go over it. Hello?
Yeah, I'm right here. Can you hear me?
Oh, okay, I thought it was saying I was paused. But anyway, yeah, I was with a mortar platoon. We basically chased the 33rd NVA Regiment around all over 3rd Corps and part of 4th Corps when I first got there. And was with a mortar platoon. We had quite a number of us coming in and out for the year I was there. And
Hmm.
probably the biggest contact was March 1st, 1970. Probably the longest battle that we had going while I was there.
Oh wow. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of great veterans and people that fought in the Vietnam War. I have family fight who fought in the Vietnam. I have maybe about 3 or 4 uncles.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was very interesting. They have the great conversations about what happened when they first got in the military and how everybody kind of meshed in together. And of course, you saw the document. Have you seen the documentary PBS Ken Burns on the Vietnam War?
You know, I didn't watch it, but partly because I have a problem with some of Kim Burns' stuff.
Yeah.
He tends to lean to the left, even on his Gettysburg series. He tends to lean a little left. But I'm a historian. I do a lot of historic paintings, and all the way from the 1680s to the 1860s, and I read a lot of pretty much straight history. Uh,
Hmm.
for me, the greatest American that ever lived was Robert E. Lee. Now, a lot of people wince when I say that, but
Okay.
if you really study the man, he was an amazing Christian. Matter of fact, Wellington, who won the Battle of Waterloo, said of all the people he had ever met, all the kings and people from all over the world, and he had met them all. He said Robert E. Lee affected him more than any man that he ever met. He was
Hmm.
a humble man. He was opposed to slavery. He was a man that loved his family. Matter of fact, if it hadn't been for Robert E. Lee opening up the Mississippi River, a lot of the West would not have been settled because of what he did. But a lot of people don't know a lot about his life. But he was he was a really godly Christian man. And
Yes.
the more I read about him, the more impressed I am. And of course, who did he most worship? He worshiped George Washington.
George Washington.
Yeah,
Now,
he married his granddaughter. So
oh, okay, wow. So, a little bit about your history. You said now you went to Central Florida University. You got your bachelor's degree in 1974. Washington, D.C. Worked for 32 years as an illustrator, a graphic designer. You worked for several agencies. Also, you worked for the Secret Service, Secretary of Air Force, Pentagon. Wow, you did a lot of you're the man.
Well, all of
you worked for a lot of agencies.
Yeah, all of that was in the visual information area. I built exhibits that traveled to the National Sheriff's Association, the International Association of Chiefs of Police. With them, set them up. Did a lot of illustration, and then I did quite a bit of painting. And from the painting I was doing, I then started my own business while I was still in government. In 1997, I started a business called Time Past Studio, which was I would paint in watercolor and oil paintings about specific events in history, always about things that had never been painted before. I didn't want to do another painting Pickett's Charge or something like that, but unusual stuff. And then I'd research them and write a story that would go with the prints when I sold them. I got into reenacting because to go to these events, you had to be what they called a sutler, which meant that you had to dress up in a period, set up a period encampment, sell your wares. I sold paintings, poetry, music, historic music that I wrote. I would reenact as well. That went on till about 2009 when the Tea Party started, and I had my own studio out on Jekyll Island, Georgia. And when the Tea Party started,
where? What part of Georgia?
On Jekyll Island was where I had my studio. I live in Brunswick, which is about 15 miles from there. And I would do historic paintings and sell my prints and poetry and music. I could either continue in business, I could get involved with.
Is something wrong with? Hold on for a second. Is something wrong? Can you hear me very well?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I think some of your phone is going in and out. You were talking about Jekyll Island. I've been to Jekyll Island a few times. Yeah. I've been to Jekyll Island a few times, and my family's from St. Mary's, Georgia. I'm sure you heard of St. Mary's, Georgia, right?
Yes, yes. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, my family. Yes, I can hear you. Well, my family's from St. Mary's, Georgia, so I would go to St. Mary's, Georgia every year, maybe twice a year, and spend 3 months. Jekyll Island, Cumberland Island. Can you hear me?
Right. Yeah, and the St. Mary's is now that big naval base.
Yeah, Kings Bay Naval Base.
Yeah. Yeah, they decided that Charleston was too expensive for the sailors, so they moved all the submarine pins down to St. Mary's. Government saving money, right? Yeah.
I remember down in St. Mary's, Georgia, when they had they was bringing the silos in. And my family, they owned land and by the water, and you see all the subs coming in. I mean, it was an interesting thing. I think I was like 15, 16 years old seeing the form Kings Bay. And when they got basically the Kings Bay Naval Base, the city used to be like one dirt road and one headlight, Now it's like one of those Kings Bay turned the city around and the economy around in the area.
Well, the government did that too here in in Brunswick. When the naval base left Brunswick, the city was in a terrible situation. And then, of course, the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center got set up there, and that's I came down from Washington D.C. to work at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center as the art director for the center, and spent from 1989 to 2005 working there for the Department of Homeland Security.
Oh, okay. Now we're going to tell everybody how you got started. You know, the revolutionary reenactment of a revolutionary. Mm-hmm. Now, when did that get started?
The reenacting actually started when I started my business, Time Pass Studio, because they told me you can't sell your prints of your paintings unless you are dressed out in a period costume, and okay. then you had to have a period correct place, tent and everything to sell them from at these reenactments. So I wound up with actually 12 different outfits from 1680 all the way to 1860, every 20 years. So I wound up with a closet full of reenacting clothes. And so I would go to reenactments, I'd set up my encampment, and then I'd sell my prints, read my poetry, sell my poetry book, and sing music that I'd written, and that was period correct. And basically have a great time at the reenactments, because then you could stay overnight. You could get involved with they'd have big balls that you could attend. But when the Tea Party started, I was all set up as a reenactor to start playing the part of Button Gwinnett, who was the first signer of the Declaration from Georgia.
Yes.
And my very first trip was up to Atlanta because they were going to have a big Tea Party gathering there. Turned out there were 40,000 people showed up, the largest number of people they'd ever had to protest the $13 trillion in debt and the new Obama administration. So I went, saw all these people, and basically they were conservative people, so they didn't know how to chant or anything. And I'd start saying, you got to chant if you're going to be in a protest. So let's say spank Barney Frank. And they got into, by the end of the day, they were making up their own stuff, 40,000 people. And it was being broadcast all over the United States. And that was my very first big event. And then got to speak the following year in Atlanta to about 40,000 people. And I was playing the part of Button Gwinnett. And I went to Nashville and met Carl Cameron. And he said, "William, you're having too much fun. You're supposed to be an angry mob." He said, "Let me do an interview with you." So he did an on-camera interview with me. And I said, "Well, I can give you my angry mob face if you want." And we basically, after that, Carl and I hit it off real good. So the first time I went to CPAC, Carl came up and started playing with my musket. And he said, "Well, all my ancestors used to be highwaymen and up here in New England." And so all of the press saw me talking to Carl Cameron, and they thought I was supposed to be there because I was up in the area where the press was. So
what year was this?
This was 2010. CPAC.
That's when I first met you. It was the Ron Paul one, that the straw poll. Yeah,
that's right. And I was up in the top where I could look down on everybody down there. And next year they put up a fence to keep me from being there. The Republicans did, because they were they didn't like me waving that Tea Party flag over the top of all of their people down below. But and people would look up to see, after each speaker, they'd look up to see if I was cheering them on with my flag, and if I didn't, then they wouldn't. So they'd come up and get pictures with me, and I was just having a great time. But I kept thinking, if I go out of here and I have to go to the bathroom or something, I don't have one of those fancy passes, the gold passes or diamond passes, so they may not let me back. So I went out finally at about noon to go use the men's room, and came back, and sure enough, the guards stopped me, wouldn't let me in through that entrance because only Diamond people were there. So instead, one of the newsmen who'd seen me, he said, "No, he's with us." And they let me go back up. So I spent those 4 days up in the top having a good time. And
Yeah,
next year they closed it, so I couldn't get up there.
yeah, and like you've been a mainstay at the CPAC movements and the Tea Party, and you were in a documentary, one of the Tea Party documentaries, right?
Yeah, I was one of the five. Still feel that the documentary was too long, but I had fun in it. I had a couple of lines where I could be the humorous person. One place where I pull out my sword and I said, "Shall we give them a little stimulus?" And because that was the big thing at the time, the stimulus. But had fun with the movie, and
Yeah,
it led to the first March on Washington in 2009. And I'd been invited to lead the whole march, which was to me just unbelievable that they would pick me. So I was the very first one down the street.
and now your bio says that you were one of the runner-up on Time Person of the Year.
Yeah, in 2010, Time published a big picture inside with all of the Sarah Palin, all of us dressed up in colonial outfits, climbing up a boat, throwing tea out of it. Time created this big picture and put all of our pictures in it. And we were the runners up to, trying to remember who the computer guy was that got Person of the Year, but the Tea Party movement was the runner-up. We were the runner-up to them.
How was that feeling to be, runner-up, Time magazine?
Well, it was a real blessing. I spent some money creating that show over, and they had all of the key Tea Party people faces in there. Oops, something. Oh, there we are. Something that happened there. My phone keeps jumping in and out. But no, it was quite a blessing to be. I've still got copies of it that I have, and I post it on my Facebook page every so often. The picture of the Tea Party Time magazine picture.
For all those who are watching, this is Mr. William Temple, a great Tea Party activist and patriot, and he's been part of the movement basically since 2009, being a part of the Tea Party movement. He's like a mainstay at the CPAC convention. And, when I tell people about you in their picture, they're like, "Oh, my God, I know that guy. He's the guy at the CPAC convention." And I said, "Yes, this is Mr. William Temple." And they like, when they say Tea Party, look at you like, that's the guy. That's the guy in the rallies at the CPAC convention speaking.
Yeah, I claim the title of Colonial Face of the Tea Party.
Colonial Face of the Tea Party movement.
Yeah. And a lot of the liberal press have taken liberties of taking my picture and using it on articles. And so usually somebody on my Facebook page say, "Hey, William, we saw your picture." And they put it with an article that's bashing the Tea Party. So I have to go on and contact the people, telling them not to use my picture without me. But I really can't protest it because it's out there in the public arena. And so I kind of just let it go. But so far, they're not stretching my face or doing those kind of things.
So tell the audience about you, about some of the things that you've in your politics now, and
I was
how you feel about the Trump as being president, and
MAGA, MAGA, Make America Great Again. I was a Ted Cruz supporter.
I remember that you were a Ted Cruz person.
Yeah, and
I remember. Yeah, because I remember you at we were at the
Values Voter
rally. No, the rally in Washington, the UN. No, the rally in Washington with the Iranian deal.
Yes.
The Iranian, yes.
Yeah.
That Obama made. We were all there, and I remember you telling me you're a Ted Cruz man, and I was basically I was a Ted Cruz. I like Ted Cruz.
Oh, I still do.
A lot of the certain Tea Party patriot individuals were Ted Cruz fans.
Yeah, well, and the thing is, I still love Ted Cruz, but I organized a walkout at CPAC on Donald Trump after I'd done a walkout on Bush, and we actually had 1,500 people get out and walk out on Bush. And when we came out, the news media said, "Well, aren't you being rude?" And I said, "No, we just all have to go to the men's room at the same time." And they printed
Wow.
that. They printed it in the Washington Times. But
what was
then,
that like?
what?
Okay.
And then
What?
when Values Voter came around, Donald Trump was going to come. So I got I had 2,500 young Republicans getting ready to walk out with me on Donald Trump. Well, Donald Trump heard that this is going on. The media let him know this was going to happen when he came to speak, so he didn't come to speak. So we thought we'd won a great victory because we got him not to come. But then when it came down, Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton, there was no contest. So and now everything that I'm seeing Donald Trump do was everything I wanted Ted Cruz to do. And even Ted Cruz was happy with it. I didn't like what Donald Trump said about Ted Cruz's dad and all that, but that's just Donald Trump, you know. He says but I learned from Michele Bachmann, who was another person I had supported earlier. I was always hoping that Michele Bachmann would become president and be our first woman president. But she was with Donald Trump in the White House when he, at the Bible study meeting that they have every day, he prayed and received Jesus Christ. And she told us this at CPAC, or at Values Voter. She said, "I was there, I saw what he did, and I've noticed since then, and I know it's Mike Pence who's done a lot of the talking to him. He's not doing this name calling as he used to, although he said some things recently that he shouldn't say. But you know, I get the never Trumpers on my Facebook page who say, "Oh, this man is terrible. This man is horrible." Well, if they haven't gone and seen the movie The Darkest Hour, when you look at Churchill and you watch that movie, it's Donald Trump. Same thing. He is brash. He's crash. He says things he shouldn't. He's the establishment parliament can't stand him, and even the King of England shakes his hand and then wipes his hand off. I said, "This is Donald Trump." But if it hadn't been for Churchill, I asked people, maybe Churchill isn't everything that you would like him to be socially, but if it hadn't been for Churchill, the British would have caved and sought peace through Mussolini with Adolf Hitler. So sometimes God gives us people that we can't quite go, well,
figure out.
Same thing was true of General Grant. General Grant was a smoker and a drinker. And Lincoln, all the officers were complaining to Lincoln, "Well, he's a drinker, he's a drunk, he's a cigar smoker." And Lincoln finally said, "Well, somebody find out what brand of liquor he's drinking and what cigars he smokes and get him to the rest of my generals."
So,
and you think of George Patton. Patton was a nutcase, prima donna. But we needed it. We needed it. Yeah.
And so I think, when it comes to especially government and American politics and military, all these other individuals who are different from the norm. And Donald Trump is definitely different from Bush and Reagan and all the Republican candidates. Huh?
Everybody. He's different.
Yeah, he's different from I think what I think is that, and with Obama and Trump, they're similar, but they're different. Similar in the excitement. When Obama got elected in 2008, was this big excitement and like, oh my God, he's the first African American president. He's speaking all over the place. He's the excitement about what's going to happen, and the press loved him. And I tell you, the press loved Donald Trump. I mean, the press helped Donald Trump get elected. And the press really, at first they always talked about how they didn't, my God, how Donald Trump got elected. Why would they elect this guy, Donald Trump? He's never been in politics. But Donald Trump was masterful with the press. I mean, Joe in the morning would call Donald Trump up early in the morning. Donald Trump laying in bed. Joe in the morning would talk to him. Mm-hmm. And the press was there at all his rallies. And I remember at the rally in Washington, we had Ted Cruz about the Obama deal with Iran.
Right.
And they had all the candidates was there. Glenn Beck was there. Every person involved with the whole conservative movement of politics, activism, news was there. And media people were there. And Ted Cruz was by himself, and all the other candidates were coming in. We were shaking hands, talking, Sarah Palin. And when Donald Trump came, oh my God, it was like he had all these the press corps was surrounding Trump. You would think that Trump
but not because they like him. He gets their attention because they can't believe what they're hearing. But what I like about him is he is keeping his promises. I've never seen any president, including Ronald Reagan, accomplish as much as this man has accomplished in 1 year. And of course, the liberal press, they hate it. Mm-hmm. But he plays them so well. They can't not watch him. So he sort of plays them. He tells them this, and he says something salacious, and they jump on it. But at the same time, over here, he's doing this.
Yeah.
So, like ISIS. I mean, who would have thought in 9 months that ISIS would be down to their last 1,000 people?
Yes.
This guy has turned the military loose. The military loves him because this guy is going to give them what they need. He's going to say, listen, you guys get the work done. He's the same going on here.
Hello?
Same thing with, can you hear me?
Yeah. One of the things about Donald Trump, and I can hear you. For me, when it comes to Trump, I think he's a guy that wants to prove himself. Mm-hmm. And after he's talking, he's never been in politics. He's never held office. So he wants to prove that he can, be a great politician. He wants to get certain things done. And I think that, he's definitely a man that has great business sense. He's educated, and he just wants he wants to show the world, okay, not even just the country, but the world. I'm the president. You say I don't deserve to be president. I'm going to show you that I can do a great job for our country.
Exactly.
Make America great again. And all the politicians, no president is ever perfect. And none of them are the same. Bush was not like his father.
No.
His father Bush, George H. was not like Reagan. Mm-hmm. Reagan was not like Nixon. So our President Trump is different. So I understand that you're going to have, and that's what the people are, especially the left. They have a tendency of thinking everything is the same. All the politicians are the same. No, they're not the same. They're different.
Well, and the thing that's different here is I've looked now at what this man's accomplished in 1 year as president, including the Supreme Court justice and the 12 judges that have been appointed. That's more than anyone else. But you can run through the list of things that he has accomplished. He's turned the economy.
The economy is awesome.
It's going. And the thing is, it's not about Trump in the long run. It's about the American people getting what they need. The average American, not the East Coast and the West Coast people who basically don't know anything about the rest of us who live in the middle of the country. The middle class people in this country are tired of hearing about what we do for,
hello, are you there?
Yeah, it keeps pausing me for some reason. But
Okay. You sure you got an iPhone?
yeah, and people are jumping on here and they're jumping off. But it's what they're doing. It's what the people in the middle of the country are now seeing. Somebody, for instance, I know that Ted Cruz could not have won Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. The middle class people there and the workers finally saw somebody who was going to stand up for them, and they haven't seen it with the Bushes. They haven't seen it with Obama. The last time anybody was really talking their game was when Reagan was in. And both sides, the liberals in the Democrat Party and the what I call the rhinos in the Republican Party, have basically, they're the establishment. They're people who don't want change. They don't really care about what the average American wants. And this is why now we finally got a president who speaks for us. Matter of fact, I'm so glad that this guy is president. I asked myself, I don't want another politician to run for president. I want outsiders like this guy. This guy is dealing, and he's anything he sees that doesn't benefit us, whether it's the Europeans and what they want, he's not afraid to say, I'm not going to do it. Matter of fact, he doesn't care what they think. He's
what they
do
think. Yeah.
Best for us.
And that's what his whole plan is, making America great again, and especially in those areas of Michigan and Pennsylvania where a lot of businesses have left. People are getting hit hard. A lot of
coal miners.
Coal miners. And people were like, listen, we want to work. We want jobs. And it's all about putting food on the people's tables so they can feed their families and feed their children and feed themselves and make sure their families are strong again. Because if you don't have a job, then you can't help your family. You can't support your lifestyle. And
exactly. Now, I've been a pastor at a black church here in Brunswick for 23 years. And their concern was that all of a sudden illegal aliens were moving in here in Brunswick, getting houses and putting 2 and 3 families in them. And blacks who had been here for years were seeing the jobs that they wanted to do being given to people who, matter of fact, the floors in my house were put down by illegal aliens, real nice people who couldn't speak a word of English, but they did a great job in putting the floors down. But the guy that hires them puts them in a pickup truck and drives them around, and he's not paying them, taking out Social Security for them, and all this. So he's able to get cheap labor. Well, that's what the rhinos in the Republican Party want. People like Lindsey Graham, they want cheap labor. That's what the rhinos want. The left wants illegal so that they can bring them into the Democrat Party and help them get voters. So neither side really cares about the average American, because there are young people here in Brunswick who could have put those floors in for me, but the employers want them. What they just Hello?
Yeah, you're right. And one of the things is that when it comes down to I was on the show, Tommy the Gun show yesterday in St. Petersburg, Florida. We were talking about the media and how the media, the MSNBC, CNN says, well, illegal aliens, they want to save illegal aliens, keep illegal aliens in our country and protect them. And there's nothing wrong. But if you go into the inner cities and you talk to people, especially African Americans, and talk about the idea of sanctuary cities, in the African American areas where, I talk to a lot of people in the barbershops, they're against that. They're against sanctuary cities. And they talk about how the illegal aliens came in areas and took their jobs, and people that may just have a high school diploma, that's all they may have, and they want a job, and the illegal aliens came in and took their jobs because companies decided that they could pay illegal aliens maybe $8-9 an hour and pay an American citizen that works hard in our country and don't want to pay them $12, $13, $14, $15 an hour. You can pay a legal alien 8
Right.
or 9 miles an hour, and they're happy to take it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and it's a lot of frustration in the inner cities. And the media, the liberal media, MSNBC and all these other medias, they don't come to in my community, and especially the African-American community, and ask the people in the barbershops, ask the African-Americans in the barbershops, in the supermarkets, and other areas, what do you feel about illegal aliens? And they will tell you they don't like the fact that they can come in here, take the welfare, go into the areas, going to the hospitals, get free medical care, while they have to pay for medical care out of their pockets, and they driving around with no license, giving them license. I was in an accident one day with a friend of mine. This is maybe 2012, and I was hit. We were in a car, a truck, SUV, and we was just driving, and it was a stop sign, and the guy who was driving the car, he just kept on going. The red light said red light stop, but he was just kept on, and he hit us, and I saw, oh my God. He jumped out the car, and there was another group, he had made a phone call. The car came by, talked to him, and then the cops didn't arrest him because he didn't have a license. He didn't have a license. The cops did not arrest him. They gave him a ticket. Now, and if I had no license, I would have been arrested.
You'd have been in jail still.
In jail. And I'm like, what? And a lot of, African Americans like, what kind of country is this? This is our country. We pay taxes. We Americans. I have no problem saying American first. It should be Americans first.
Right. And that's what Trump said last night in his speech. Americans have dreams too. We're dreamers as well. Why isn't anybody speaking for us? I know it's insane what they're doing, and it's these mayors in these cities that are completely turning law enforcement on its head by telling their law enforcement people they can't cooperate on removing illegals. What's really funny is if you wanted to go to Mexico and become a citizen of Mexico and you crossed illegally into Mexico, you're going to go to a bad prison. You're not only that, if you want to become a citizen there and you're not Native Mexican, you can't buy.
Yeah.
You can't own anything. So,
wow.
The Mexicans have their president was on recently on Fox, their former president, bashing Donald Trump for saying we're going to make them pay for the wall. Well, they have to pay for that wall once it gets built because we're going to put tariffs on, and people coming in are going to have to pay. So Donald will make sure that they pay for it after a while. The problem is getting our Congress to get the $23 billion, which is chicken feed compared to the giveaway stuff that we give away. Our government is so wasteful. They're not stopping spending and bringing our national debt under control, and that's at some point that's gonna hurt us bad. Well, it's hurting us bad now.
Yeah. And one of the things that when I'm in the areas, I talk to African Americans about, I like to talk, ask them questions, and they have no problem building a wall. They a lot of people, if I'm on a train, I'm on a bus, we're having a discussion. I remember, they have no problem about, okay, well, if he wants to build a wall, let him build a wall. One of the things that were talked about when Donald Trump got elected or before he got elected, they were talking about, oh my God, Donald Trump is going to send all the African Americans back to Africa. And this is something, this is the crazy talk of the left and the media. And I tell a story when I was at my job, and it was a young girl. She was left. She was from far left. She thought she was very political. So she says, Donald Trump's a racist, and he's the worst president. This was when Donald Trump he was 4 months in office. She said, Donald Trump is the worst president ever. He's a racist. He's going to start a war. He wants to start a war with North Korea. And the whole world, the whole country is going to fall apart. And he's going to destroy this whole country. And I was like, wow. So I said Donald Trump is worse than, you know, George Bush, who started a war, you know, weapons of mass destruction, you know, lied about a war. Donald Trump is worse than Clinton, 94 crime bill, when more African Americans were in jail, went to jail under Bill Clinton than any president in history who was a Democrat. So
right.
Donald Trump is worse than Lyndon Baines Johnson. Lyndon Baines Johnson and what he, you know, some of the things that he did.
Yeah.
And then she looked at me and she was like, "Who is this guy?" And then I asked her, "Well, I guess Donald Trump is worse than Woodrow Wilson, who started the Federal Reserve, the income tax, and so all these different things, and you know, all these things that Woodrow Wilson did, who basically took the power out of the people's hands and put it in and the IRS and the Volstead Act and all these different things. You know, it's so, you know, and so she looked at me and I'm like, well, and I asked her, so is Donald Trump, he's been in office 4 months. How is a man that's been in office for 4 months the worst president of all time? And the fact is, they just mad because he beat the Clintons. He beat the Clintons. He beat, you know, he beat the Bushes, the two most powerful political families in America at the time.
Right.
So my thing is that, you know, I tell these young kids, know your history, know about the past, you know, and it's about understanding history. You know, don't listen to MSNBC or CNN. Do your own fact checking, and you need to know these things because, you know, if you don't know these things, and then you're saying, "Oh, Donald Trump," then they had to, you know, Donald Trump is the worst president. Well, you're basically not understanding. You're following fake news.
Right.
You're following the fake news.
The reason I got into the Tea Party movement was because it gave me a chance to talk about America's history by playing the parts of colonial Americans and the founders. And I mean, I got there were some who didn't in the Tea Party didn't want me to bring up anything that had to do with God or religion, but I was quoting at the inauguration. I got to go to speak. I got to go speak at the inaugural prayer breakfast as Patrick Henry, and I loved what Patrick Henry said in May 1775. He says, "It cannot be emphasized too often that this nation was founded not by religionists, but by Christians, not on religion, but on the gospel of Jesus Christ. For this very reason, peoples of other faiths have been afforded asylum, prosperity, and freedom of worship here." Well, a lot of Americans never hear the quotes of our ancestors about how religious the people were who founded this country. The very first Congress met in a church in New York City. And George Washington said it is impossible to govern the world without God and the Bible. So then I started getting from people, well, he wasn't talking about Christianity. I said, well, that's not true. Because when they wrote the Declaration of Independence, they made it clear that we were made by our Creator, which they capitalized. When they talked about the Creator God, they were talking about the God of the Bible. And everyone at that time understood that it was when they were referring to religion, they were referring to Christianity. So as a Christian pastor, my chief focus in the Tea Party was to remind people of how religious and moral our founders were. And I even faced people who didn't want me to even mention these things. It was almost
wow.
Yeah, people, if you mentioned Jesus Christ, oh man, they were about to jump off the back of the and it's funny to see that kind of reaction, but I was just quoting history. John Adams put it this way in 1798. He says, "We have no government armed with power, capable of contending with human passions, unbridled by morality and religion. Ambition, revenge, or gallantry would break the strongest cords of our Constitution as a whale goes through a net. Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to go. And I can go on and on with all of the founders.
You know what? Yeah, and one of the things I talk about in the movement when I speak about Dr. King and what he believes in the movement and how he talked about God. When he said that true forever on the scaffold, wrong forever on the throne, yet that scaffold sways the future. And behind the dim unknown stands God within the shadows, keeping watch above his own. And I tell you that because God is always watching us. He's there with us. We have to call on him. And if we don't call on him, we're going to have problems. And so that's what the thing is, calling on God. God is in the shadows. He's watching us. He knows we're there, and we have to call on him. So, one of the things that, I see is a lot of problems, especially with the left. And, a lot of them, they don't go to church. They know nothing about God. They don't want God in the picture. And even in some parts of the Republican Party, they don't want to talk about God. Now, the left, the Clintons, and other people from the left, the Democratic Party, God is not even in the picture. They don't want to talk about Jesus Christ. How could you not talk about this country and Jesus Christ?
Right.
And a lot of the founding fathers were Christian.
The founders knew that apart from God, Benjamin Franklin made this clear, said apart from God, our attempt to build a nation would be totally futile. They understood God blessed. And see, for people who don't believe in God, I mean, you really don't have anything you can say to unite them. I mean, they're talking about uniting. They're not going to unite. This is a war going on right now. The war is split into two camps. Those that believe in God and believe in small government, believe in the individual, believe in the original Constitution, and those on the left who are anti-God, who are globalists, who want us to be part of the world system, which is basically, as Jesus put it, the world lies in the lap of the evil one. So people who don't believe in God, if they're the ones controlling our universities, which they are now, our kids are being indoctrinated against belief in God. And yet the founders knew the Constitution wouldn't be at all without a belief in God. They said our Constitution is absolutely useless for anybody but a moral and religious people. So the question is, are we still?
Yeah, and that's one of the things that, I definitely, what bothers me is you're dealing with, especially a younger generation and a leftist generation that want to take God out of the picture. And we're godly people. And it is so important, that God stays in the Constitution, God stays in the White House, God stays in this country. Because if God doesn't stay in the country, then we're going to have a serious problem. We already have more violence than ever before. If you look at the Hollywood situation, Hollywood is immoral. The movies that they're showing on at the movie theaters, the television shows, all these other shows that people young people are watching.
Right.
And,
gratuitous. Oops, have I lost you?
Okay, yeah. So, one of the things is that the violence on the television shows, the violent video games, it's all about violence and murder.
It's not necessary. It's all gratuitous violence, gratuitous sex. And then you get these same people coming back to us to tell us, well, you shouldn't own a gun. And yet you go see one of the movies and all of these people are killing everybody left and right. So it's hard to find real quality entertainment now because Hollywood, like you say, is just morally bankrupt. I got to plug myself in here.
Well, I want to. Okay. Well, I just want to say anybody out there who's was watching and asking me questions, but I'd like to thank you for coming on the show.
On the
You're
show.
definitely, huh? I want to. I think Mr. William Temple is gone, but I want to thank Mr. William Temple for coming on the show, and we definitely is going to invite him on next time, maybe in a few weeks or another month or so, talk about a specific issue. Mr. William Temple is a great patriot of the Tea Party movement, of conservative movement. He is a pastor down in Brunswick. Mr. William Temple, I thank you for coming on the show. Thank you all for watching, and this is a powerful show for me and a great show, and I thank all of y'all for watching the show. This is the On Fire Show with your host, Daryl Michele Brooks, and I'll see you in a couple days. I might be back on in a few. God bless. And we're out.